Egy kerekasztal beszélgetés következik, amelyet Magyarország egykori legjobb újságírója fog moderálni. Kicsit sem vagyok elfogulatlan. És mindjárt körbejárja olyan cégek képviselőjével a beszélgetés témáját, amelyek élen járnak, hogy miben, azt Antónia mindjárt megbeszéli, és hogy mennyire. Ezúttal is csak a moderátort mutatom be részletesebben, akit röviden már említettem, egykori fantasztikus kollégámat, Mészáros Antónia, ma már az UNICEF Magyarország ügyvezető igazgatója, ma is kommunikációs szakember, korábban sokáig televíziós újságíró, az ATV-n ismerhettétek az Egyenes beszédből, a Szabad szemmel című műsorból, a Startból, korábban az MTV-n az este műsorvezetője volt, még korábban dokumentumrendező és a BBC munkatársa. Akiket pedig Antónia mindjárt jobban bemutat, Alisa Stepanova-Kolárova, Szabó Melinda, Szilva Mónika és Tokai Magdolna. Fogadjátok őket szeretettel!
Thank you very much, Christina. I should have come on stage earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt this fantastic introduction. What are friends for? So thank you very much for having us here. I have to confess, originally when we were planning this event, I was only going to be wearing one hat, and I said yes to moderating 2 panel discussions today. Since then, events have caught up with us all, and I'm spending most of my time working on the humanitarian response in the Ukraine and the neighboring countries. And thank you very much for Edina for making that the fundraising objective of today's event as well. Thank you to all 3 of you who have contributed so far. I know it's really hard to find the link, so if anyone needs any help with that, you know how you find the web link, you can come and grab me in the breaks. I'm also very happy to tell you about the work that's being done and the situation in the Ukraine. That's clearly not what this panel discussion is about. So we're not going to be talking about that in the next half an hour, but we are going to be talking about another very important subject, which is female equality, equal opportunities, and how this translates to the corporate sector. Let me introduce our guests. Monika Silva is Customer Director at Tesco. Melinda Szabó, you've already met. She's Chief Commercial Officer at Hungarian Telekom. Alica Stepanova-Kolárova arrives from Henkel, Slovakia. She is HR leader. And Magdolna Tokai, founder and leader of an organization called Working Mums and chief advisor to the CEO of MVM. Thank you very much for being here. Let me start by saying that we all know that governments might not be as fast in responding to the equality need as maybe some of us would like, but the biggest and most successful corporates in the world have already initiated very wide-ranging programs and practices. And the representatives of the companies here today do work for corporations where there is already diverse management, and they know that this is good for business. We're looking for short answers. The whole conversation will be half an hour, but tell me a little bit about where you see the proof that having leaders who are women, having a diverse management, having opportunities for women to return to work after having children is actually good for business, that it's driving your revenue, that it's helping you with your core function. Melinda?
Well, first of all, welcome everybody. Where I see the greatest opportunity, like in Telekom, we have currently 26 percentage point ratio of females amongst our leaders and our leadership squad. That's how we identifying ourselves. It's a 50-50 percentage point of female and male ratio. And we're reading a lot of studies, like McKinsey has a study from 2020, how the diverse leadership and affects and impacts the business. But I don't want to come to that one, but I would like to share with you that Hungarian Telekom was most successful in the last 3 years, both financially and business-wise. And also we increased the customer satisfaction greatly, so we became #1 on that field. And also the employee satisfaction increased dramatically. So all in all, I think we really impacting our results, financial and employee results, by being a diverse company.
When we talk about female careers, it's very difficult not to look at the fact that as families have children, in most cases, it ends up being the woman in a relationship who stays home with the child for several years, and this can impact careers. How do you deal with this in Henkel? I know that you have a very specific 3-step approach.
Good afternoon, first of all, from my end. Greetings from Slovakia. Just to set up a scene, to introduce you a bit of Henkel Slovensko. With 1,900 employees, 64% women, all in all, 51% in managerial positions. Recently, 380 of our women colleagues on maternity or parental leave. So rather a big number of our female colleagues, and we definitely have to look into it and take measures throughout the whole life cycle of our women colleagues, even starting from the recruitment over, let's say, reaching any gender topics, then women before leaving for maternity leave, definitely they have very tailor-made and individual contact with HR and leaders, even discussing very transparently their talent and also career development path, even after coming back. So it is already transparently discussed prior leaving for maternity leave, receiving several financial benefits prior leaving, during the parental or maternity leave, which in Slovakia is the same as in Hungary, I suppose, 3 years. But with actions and measures we took in Henkel Slovakia, offering the very unique Henkel kindergarten, staying in touch with our female colleagues during the maternity parental leave via monthly HR newsletters, bringing them back to special events, etc. And this by these actions and measures, our employee colleagues are in average deciding to return back to work after 1 year and 9 months in average, in comparison what they are eligible according to the labor law in Slovakia as such. But during the maternity leave, their salary are increased according to the average salary increase in Henkel Slovakia. So this is also reported over the social security, and accordingly their income is calculated. And definitely there is also a third bucket of measures we are taking care, and this is after they come back. 100% of colleagues coming back from maternity and our parental leave are coming back to the same managerial position. And if we are speaking about non-managerial positions, the fact is that in every case when the person is coming back from maternity parental leave, the salary increase is in place, etc., etc. So rather diverse and rich measures are taken.
Monica, how do you at Tesco help mothers come back to work or stay at work?
Tesco is very much about family-oriented. We do have around 11,000 colleagues. Majority of them is women. And you can imagine that people are working at shop floor and also in the office, so quite wide area. And the women are in different kind of life stages. Some are kind of newcomers, starting the career. Some are already stepping into establishing a family, having kids. And Tesco is supporting them in any way, meaning that if they need any kind of support, which means less working time, working at a different place, different position, in order to be more with the family, or when they are coming back to Tesco, then this is all possible. And Tesco is also very much supportive when the mothers are coming back to do it in a gradual way, even paying the full amount of the salary to support them. And
so
also
they can get the full amount while working part-time?
Yes, in a gradual timeline. And also supporting the fathers, so also possible to go to of the fathers to maternity leave. So I think the approach of Tesco is having the employee in the center, the colleague in the center, and the colleague need to, of course, announce that what is the topic, what is the request, how Tesco can help. But this is the nature of the culture at Tesco.
Thank you very much for bringing up the question of fathers, which is something we should definitely talk about before our half an hour is up. But before we do that, Magdalena, you at Working Mums are helping companies help women reintegrate into the workforce. Why and how do you think this is important for the companies that you work with, or the companies in Hungary in general? And how do you do it?
Exactly. We are supporting parents in their role of being a parent and in the very important role of them being a resource, a very valuable resource to the company from one hand. And from the other hand, we help companies recognize and support their colleagues, because being a parent is a life cycle. Sooner or later, most of the employees would become parents or would want to become parents. And reintegration after is one step in this life cycle. It is very important and much easier to reintegrate into the company back if you are ready for it, if you prepared. It is very much said in these days that it's very good to be prepared before becoming a parent, to talk about it within the companies and the organizations, because after the reintegration is just one process. We in the Working Moms like to say that we are delivering puzzle-like solutions from bath time for fathers and to respect that period of the day in the companies, through programs, through mentoring, through other kinds of things. But it's very important for the company and the decision makers to recognize how valuable parents are. And just one issue that arises very often here are the biases which are related to the working parents. And I would tell you just one single statistics, which was done here in Hungary in a SSC company with almost 1,000 employees. The percentage of sick leave, which, let's say, mothers took within one period of time because their child was sick at home, is 0.2%. So that was the sick leave they took because they were at home with their children. And this is a bias that needs to be changed, definitely. And we can do that by letting the decision makers know how working parents actually function and to support them. And one very important thing is that all the programs and suggestions that we make, and we have really a very broad scale of that, in the long run, we always encourage companies to find people among their employees who define supporting working parents as a love project. Whether it's mentoring program, whether there are workshops that I can tell you more, etc. But it's very important that the real value is within the company and that should be used.
I should actually mention that we've done our own research with UNICEF Hungary 2 years ago on this issue, and we found that there were incredibly contradictory expectations from Hungarian society. The overwhelming majority of people said that they thought women should work, not necessarily have a career. That is something a lot less people agreed with, but work, be in some kind of employment that will supply the family with an income. But the overwhelming majority also said they didn't think a mother with young children would be full value as an employee. And they also said that they thought the children would suffer as a result of their mother's ambition. So the work is clearly cut out for us. And we know from any kind of research and any kind of conversation with anyone that the key to a woman's success at work when she has a family is the support she receives at home, and whether the father takes their role seriously as a caregiver in the family. So companies clearly have an obligation to support the men as well in this story. At Henkel, what do you do to support the fathers, the men, to become supportive of their wives' careers?
Indeed. Last year, the accumulation of the negative feedbacks of our male colleagues appeared via the standard employee experience survey we ran on a bi-yearly level, where our male colleagues stated they feel unequally treated in comparison with our female colleagues. As, for example, the criteria for accepting the Henkel woman employee child to Henkel kindergarten was set up according to the first priority woman coming back from a maternity or parental leave. This was the criteria number 1. So we excluded by this also our male colleagues. Our female colleague leaving for maternity leave, receiving a special medical care package at private medical center for a baby, but this was not also eligible for our male colleagues having small kids. Though we made a change and we enlarged the scope of eligible colleagues, also including male colleagues. And when speaking about the career, definitely here we have clear, transparent trajectory of career and development path, not stating this is for men or this is for women, but equally. And very transparently available and visible for all, even newcomers, where they may find what it should be taken or what should be considered, what kind of skills are needed or trainings to, in 2 years, become, for example, leader of XY team.
Thank you. It's a very interesting answer. Indeed, men don't just need the support, we also need to be aware of the sensibilities. One example from where I work is every year when we celebrate the International Day of the Girl Child, we always get letters from men outraged about why we're not celebrating male children in the same way. So equality goes both ways. I'm sure that that's an important consideration in a workplace, to have the buy-in from the male colleagues. So far we've been discussing primarily what we can do to help women come back to work or stay at work. But Magyar Telekom and other companies as well, I'm sure, but in the case of Magyar Telekom, this is a public declaration, is committed also to breaking the glass ceiling. So having women equal access to the upper floors of management. How do you do that, and how far have you got?
Indeed, we are living with example. I would say that one, as I mentioned, that in our leadership squad, we 50-50% male and female. And on the other hand, I think, and I strongly believe that Telekom is really putting the families in the center of how we're treating our employees, because we all know that, as you mentioned, Antonia, that going to the past and becoming a leader is not a one-man show. It's not only a lady or the gentleman's job to do in the family, but rather working together, helping to each other. And for that, we developed lots of programs like, we're giving extra 10 days maternity leave for the male colleagues as well. We developed lots of trainings for the one who's coming back from maternity leave. If they decide to change the profession or the role, or if the priorities are changing. So I think what we can really do as a support to really accept the need of our colleagues and help them to get to know their needs and developing the opportunities accordingly. So I think that's important. And what we really putting as a target ahead of us, like reaching this 36 percentage point of female leaders among our community by 2025, sooner the better. So I would be happy to have that one next year maybe. But it is also true that what we really have to care about, that people needs to be happy what they're doing, and we don't have to overstress the organization with either way. So we have to act on it naturally.
Sorry, a personal follow-up question. You now work in a leadership team that has achieved complete gender parity. I'm sure it wasn't always the case. So how does it feel different?
I think it's a very special situation because I cannot really judge, what really changed precisely, but I can assume the way we started to work, that we actually caring about our personalities. We run a Hogan test, just give you an example. Which is not only an individually understandable test, but you can run a profile of your team. So we're running a profile of our leadership team to understand each other better, how we act when we are out of our comfort zone. And for that, we can actually shorten, and getting a deeper understanding of each other, and we can act more on that one. So I think what we're really achieving as developing ourselves as a team is that we're giving back to the organization. That's one thing. We can run a much more diverse organization, so we can ask relevant questions, like, who is not sitting at the table? Or if she or he is sitting at the table, maybe we can't hear the voice that much. How should we really change our processes, services, or internal roles to include people who's disabled, maybe, and really give them the opportunity to enjoy our services and our workplace? So many things, I think, coming as a consequence of our diverse leadership team. That's how I see it.
We always talk about the period when the women have children and they have duties to take care of them. But obviously there are also many, many years, decades, in every woman's life and career that come after that. So what can companies do to make sure that opportunities can be taken at that stage? Monica?
Thank you for that question. I can share my personal story in this respect. I joined to Tesco 7 months before, so I'm fresh. And with my previous company, I used to work for another corporate company. I spent 24 years. So it was a huge, huge, huge part of my life. I had my son there, born. I received all the support. I became there first the member of the board, the only woman at that time, which was tough. So I had to kind of take coaching, and I had to develop myself very strongly. After that, others also joined. So I see also a change in terms of the leadership style. However, after my son went to the university and he moved out from the nest, from the family nest, I found myself in a situation that, let's reorganize my career chapter. I do have an opportunity. I don't have that everyday type of caretaking at home anymore. I'm more mobile. I'm still open. I'm still looking for opportunities. And I put it on the table at my previous company, but somehow, many times the career management of the women is kind of very much focusing on having work-life balance, the child, and so on, getting into the board, for example. But what's after? Because still, you have the energy, you have the passion. And somehow this was a point where we, we're not kind of quite good defining what could be the next step. So I started to be open. And this was the time when I met Tesco. And this was the interesting momentum when I think both took the risk. Tesco took the risk to hire somebody who spent 24 years at another company with a culture, with kind of that ways of working, heritage, whatever. And I took the risk to leave my previous place to join to a new team, to a new culture. But it was a very good experience, so this is what I can tell. And I encourage others that rethink the career opportunity, and there is much more after that. And I also think that we have a kind of transformation in our life in any way. We live longer, we work longer. So I think it's very much important to also think on women after 40, 50, what's next, how companies can work and utilize those kind of energy and passion, what is there, and the knowledge.
Now that women can have careers and become leaders, an issue that is increasingly on the agenda everywhere in the world is the gender pay gap that still exists. That sometimes that woman in the leadership position isn't getting paid the same amount that she would be were she a man. Magdalena, how do you help companies address this, which surely must be one of the most sensitive issues when you start working with a new client?
Especially in Hungary, when you have 3 years of maternity leave, which is a double-edged sword if you are not well prepared for that. Basically, I'm an economist. I love figures very much. And if you calculate value added, net present value, call it whatever you want, of women to the board, or a board which has been just introduced a new member in a women's role, you will be surprised how figures are different. Just because you cannot make such optimal decisions when all the people are thinking at one mindset. If you introduce women in the board, that's again a value added which cannot be, done if everybody in that box is sitting and is, I don't know, orange or whatever. So it's very important to approach this question from this direction as well. As I mentioned, this can be achieved very simply by, for example, mentoring, because very often people say that we don't know whom to introduce to the board. We don't know who would be optimal for that. And if you have an overall, for example, mentoring program within your organization, from one hand, the mentee would receive the support he or she needs. And from the other hand, if it's a she, a mentor who is in a leader's position can very easily get to know her and suggest her for promotion, for example. And putting examples in an organization is of extreme importance, because via example you can motivate and you can encourage others to join and to break that, let's say, glass ceiling.
Melinda, you have a response?
Yes, I think what is important to talk about it, to acknowledge that this exists, because each company has its heritage. You cannot solve all the problems at once. What we can do and we need to do, and this is our responsibility too, to measure it and act on it. That's what we're doing at Magyar Telekom. We're measuring what is the situation, acting on it, and also making sure that we're progressing. So we every year creating a better and better situation. And I think that's important, to constantly working on that one and addressing the topic.
Thank you. Magdalena mentioned bias before. And bias, especially unconscious bias, is definitely part of the story from the first moment when someone is applying for a job. How do you eliminate this in your recruitment process and later in Henkel, Alita?
It is, first of all, a matter of Henkel culture, overcoming the bias. We don't even target specifically on the gender topics, but rather specify our agenda when it comes to the overcoming the bias is about to the mindset. So as this is the mindset topic, because by setting up the right mindset, then this gives you a possibility to overcome either gender or disability, diversity topics, or nationality, religion, etc. And definitely for Henkel, Slovensko, we thrive also for the age management. So we have several ladies 50 plus in managerial positions. We are openly searching for such a candidates. We are open to employ disabled colleagues. We are employing colleagues from 52 different nationalities. So the nationality is religion. There's no, let's say, bias in this respect, but from the cultural perspective, we are approaching the topic from the neuroscience via the also iceberg coaching technologies, to which all our employees are led to and taught have to, let's say, benefit out the iceberg individual coaching technologies, but also team, etc. So not speaking about the gender, but mindset and overcoming any potential bias which comes with the mindset.
Monica, how do you do this at Tesco?
Tesco is very open. Even in Hungary, we have 24 nations, the colleagues from 21 nations. As I mentioned, majority of women. Also very much open to work with colleagues with disability or any kind of diversity we can speak about. This is what is highly welcomed at Tesco. And we treat each other very in a fair way. Tesco does a lot in terms of opening our eyes, making ourselves sensitive to other people, how to understand the situation of other people, also within Tesco or in the society. So there are a lot of trainings around that one. And going back to the equal payment, I think the ultimate end game is the equal payment, and Tesco is very much committed toward equal payment, because what people take home, taking care of their families, growing the kids, then there should not be any difference. So this is, I think, what is very much important.
Thank you. I know that unconscious bias is something that is being approached in a very structured way in Magyar Telekom, and you are paying special attention to making sure it doesn't exist. How?
There is a colleague actually in the room, so we actually do have a person in the organization, and soon to become a small team, who's taking care of this kind of thoughts. That's very important. We're running lots of training across the organization, and making sure we're giving, it's not just a training and just clicking, but giving tangible examples, videos, and case studies, what we really think and what is really the unconscious bias, because we sometimes don't even know what that means in practice. We always think this is a big thing, but it's sometimes a very small thing, how judgmental we can be with a person we didn't even talk with. So I think it's unconscious bias is not starting with the huge things, it's starting with the very small ones. And working for a technological company, technology industry, I think for us particularly very important to make sure that we attract females to the company, because technical universities still females are still underrepresented. So we have a lot of cooperation with universities and making sure if we're hiring, then females are also there. I'm not saying that the selection itself based on gender, but because of this diversity, important for us, we're taking care of that one. But also, as I mentioned previously, all the disabled people, or how we really acting on making our services available and training the colleagues, or training in the shops or customer care, where we actually already have people from different areas. I think that's very important. So we have a program, and this is evolving, and we actually moving forward with that one with the help of lots of people in the company.
So I've heard you right that anytime you recruit for any position, it is an absolute requirement that there must be at least one female candidate or more?
Yes, we're trying to achieve that one. It's not always the case because, as I mentioned, working in a technological industry.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask.
But the aim, the intention is really that trying to give the opportunity for everybody.
I guess what this leads us to is the idea of career change. Maybe sometimes women can start doing one thing in a company, but once they have a family, their priorities might shift, the time that they have might shift, and this could also be an opportunity to retrain and do something else. If you're a technological company, maybe women can start thinking about fields that they were not previously into. How is this being addressed? Is it being addressed as an opportunity within your companies? And this is the last question I have for you. So let me know if any of you or all of you would like to answer. Alica, I can see that this is close to your heart.
Indeed, continue with already mentioned career and development path, which is transparent, available to all. And the shifts between different career paths are available to all, including women deciding to choose either expert role or project managerial role or leadership role. And here, definitely all the support needed when it comes to the training or body program is available. But not only the transparency in career and development, but also decreased working contracts, flexible working time, which may also support our women colleagues, especially at the beginning when returning back from maternity leave. and choosing maybe as of beginning when the time spent with family and child or children is rather needed, then maybe choosing a rather small scope position and then having any time availability to jump to another career path.
Monica?
If I may add my personal experience with Tesco, what made me the biggest surprise, and maybe you remember Banu's presentation, that Tesco is ready to put people or offer opportunity on a completely different area that requires a completely different set of skills or capabilities, because Tesco believes very much if people are stretched out, taken out from the comfort zone, then they can learn, develop, and they can prove their ability. And I'm working with colleagues, many of them with Tesco even 10, 20 years, already having experiences in very, 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 very different areas. And this is valid also for women. So this opportunity also available for women. And this was a very interesting learning for me that Tesco is not insisting on kind of having certain capabilities and keeping people within that one, but moving out completely to another area.
Thank you. Melinda, the last word is yours.
Thank you. What I would like to add, we talked a lot about the responsibilities of the company, but I would also like to include into this discussion the responsibility of the human or the person who is leaving and trying to come back, because I think the systematic planning and really living with the opportunities and making ourselves to really, you know, if we want to change, then change, and trying to find the opportunity, that's also important. And I think when we really pushing ourselves up to the limit, I agree that that's where we can learn. And people's coming back, I think it's important to find the right balance. And for example, the hybrid workplace nowadays, we all know that COVID had a big impact on this one, but what we see in the organization that with the hybrid workplace and keeping this form, it really helps the families to keep the proper work-life balance. And it's not only about females, but also about the males who can also contribute in the family life much more and in a sufficient way with this working format. So I think a lot of small steps moving to the direction that diversity is worth it to do.
Thank you very much for the conversation. And we will now hand back to the wonderful Cristina Bombera.